Hi friends, some people are joining. Hi everyone. Alright, some people are finding the live. How's everyone doing? Has everyone watched the episode yet? Hi Shani. Hi, okay, great. People are actually joining. I was worried no one would be wanting to join me tonight. You're very welcome for my recaps. Happy to do them. Yes, an insane episode indeed. I can't wait to chat about it with you guys. I'm very excited to discuss this one with other people who love the show as much as me. And let me tell you, I was up. I wasn't sure that I was going to watch it at midnight. And then it got close to midnight and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay up and watch it. And then I almost regret it because by the end I was thinking about it so much it was making my head spin and then I couldn't fall asleep. And then this morning I woke up again early so that I could start working on the content for my videos. So I really haven't stopped thinking about it since I watched it. So yeah, I didn't sleep after for very long or very well. But yeah, it was a doozy. Did everyone like it? Is everyone's impression positive? Yes, I picked the dragonfly. I was thinking about what image I wanted to use for the background today, and I figured this was the safest. Yes, I have read The Space Between. I would highly recommend that you read it. I wanted another hour too. I felt like it was unfair to end it there. Yeah, I can't wait to get into the thick of this whole faith thing. There's so many directions they could go with this, and I'm glad you're catching the live too. There's so many directions they can go with this. They really shocked me personally with the decision to have faith be how they ended this season. I really wasn't expecting that. Really wasn't expecting it. I didn't read the parade article yet. No, I've been tagged in a bunch of comments saying that I need to. I just haven't had time. I truthfully, and I think this will make everyone happy, hopefully, have spent most of the day in the background here copying over all of my videos from TikTok onto my new Instagram page, because a lot of people want to be able to access them, and I also want a digital record somewhere other than just TikTok, so I've been doing that most of the day. So no, I haven't read the article yet. Okay, we're getting a lot of questions. This is wonderful. Thanks, guys. I want to go back and see if I can find some of them. Yeah, now back in Droughtlander, but thankfully we only have to wait until the summer, which is good, before Blood of My Blood. I know I have no one to talk to in my personal life about the episodes either, so I'm always happy for our little community on TikTok. We didn't see Faith being buried. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. Master Women did heal Claire in season 2, and Mother Hildegard is the nun who buried Faith, or said she buried her. As for the third part of that question, is it a lie? We're gonna have to find out. I don't know what I'm gonna do after season 8 is over personally either. Is there a specific order to read the other books? I think you mean the novellas. I've made a video about that. If you want to scroll down, the background of that video is like all of the book covers. I have one for reading them, books and novellas, if you wanted to read them in chronological order, not in order of release, which some people don't like that thank you. Some people don't like that I made that video, but it's more so for people who are familiar with the storyline. If you wanted to read things in timeline sequential order, I put it in that order. Also, Diana Gabaldon's website is a wonderful resource if you want a list of all of the book names, titles, where to find them, so that if you want to check them out from your local library or on Libby or wherever you want to pick them up, you at least know the titles and where to find them all. Oh, I'm sad you can't stay either, but I will post this on my YouTube channel if you want to watch it later. Do I have any comments on who could have been married to Faith? So I'm not even sure that I've totally bought into the fact that Faith lived. And I sort of touched on that in part 4 of my review video. But in book 9, Go and Tell the Bees That I'm Gone, Claire talks in her head a lot about Fanny, because Fanny, obviously with her upbringing, has seen a lot, and she knows far more than a child of her age should know, and she has a tendency to just blurt out things that are often viewed as slightly inappropriate or weird for her to know at her age, and she's given them insights into her upbringing that Claire picks up on. And Claire actually has a thought at one point that maybe on the journey over from Europe and the continent to America, the girls were so beautiful that it wouldn't have surprised her if her parents had been, removed, so to speak, and the girls taken, so to be sold into a brothel of some sort. So Claire's definitely had a notion that either her parents were on board the ship and something happened, or like there was a reason that they were separated from their parents and left orphaned. So I don't have any real insight into who the father could have been, but I also don't know if I believe that Faith's alive and this isn't just kind of like a shock value thing. I really don't know. The books don't have a lot of information about her. And what we do have information on is very much Claire speculating and reaching almost for any sort of justification that Faith could have lived, but we really have not received any sort of valid insight into that being a possibility. And I also think that it opens up such a big can of worms if this is true, that I don't know if the show's ready to answer the questions. So I'm very curious. I'm very, very curious. Let me go back and read some here. How did she know the song? I know, that's, again, one of the many questions. I'm almost leaning towards the fact that potentially their mother, who might not have been Claire and Jamie's Faith, is another time traveler. I don't know about Jane and Fanny being time travelers. They certainly could be if their parents were, but I like to think they must have been raised by one, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was Faith. Master Raymond didn't heal Claire in this newest episode. No, it seems like he just came in to speak to her and give her his kind of word of, not warning, but just asking for forgiveness and foreshadowing something. But no, he didn't heal her. Yeah, I think a lot of people now are starting to think about the William and Jane being related situation. I certainly did in the books. That was another reason why I was like, I don't know if this makes sense. But if Faith lived, and again, this is insinuating she's not still alive. It's insinuating at one point she did live, then that would mean that she is William's half-sibling, and therefore Jane and Fanny are his nieces. Do you, Master Raymond, didn't let Claire know about Faith because she may... Oh, Wendy, I'm sorry, your comment got cut off. Jane was bathed in blue light at the end. Yep. You're welcome. Thank you for following along. Someone in your comments say Fanny and Jane could be Claire's sisters. Yes, someone did comment that on one of the review videos, and I thought that was a really interesting take. That could be very cool, actually, and it would get rid of the whole creepiness of William and Jane. They switched the baby, perhaps, also plausible. You don't think it's for shock. It very well could not be. I'm just very curious where they're going to take this, given that they are departing from the source material a little bit here. Okay, someone mentioned the French girl Jamie couldn't save being a relative of Claire's. That's another theory that I certainly think has merit. I admittedly haven't read that part in the Virgin's novella in quite some time, so it's not the freshest in my memory, but I really do think that's very plausible. Diana is meticulous in her genealogy, and I don't know that she would want them. I mean, she does have some sort of a say in how the show goes, and I don't know if necessarily she wanted them to go this direction. This morning on her Facebook page, that certainly seemed to be the vibe. I almost feel like when they greenlit a season 8, this might have been a rewrite that they were trying to find some sort of a way to wrap up the end of this season, and this was one that they were able to kind of stitch together, and maybe that's how we ended up here, but I don't know. You need to read the Parade article. Yes, I know. I really need to read. Everybody all day has told me, and I have not had time yet. A theory of Jane's locket. I mean, clearly a mother of hers, whether it's the real faith or not, gave it to her. And in the books, she does have a drawing of her mother that she carries around with her. So that is pulled from the books. Reworked slightly, but pulled from the books. How does she know the song? Yeah, the song is an interesting one because I don't know that I fully buy into Claire singing to a deceased child and having that child grow up and know the song that they heard prior to them being revived. So that's definitely an interesting take, and that's why I think almost that perhaps their parents or their mother was a time traveler, but not necessarily Claire and Jamie's daughter. Everyone is saying how would she know the song when she was a baby? Yes, I just touched on that. What if Faith traveled back and watched Claire sing the song to her? It's an interesting take. I'm just more curious about how and when she was revived, if she did live. Because it doesn't sit right with me that Mother Hildegard would have knowingly given the baby to someone other than Claire. Do you know how many novellas there are off the top of my head? Ooh. For some reason, the number 12 is coming up in my head. That sounds right, but it's probably not. I think it will tie into the spin-off show. Yeah, it does seem like, and this is my interpretation, because Diana hasn't finished the last novel yet, and this morning she did write that she's hoping that perhaps the 10th book and the 8th season will be released around the same time as one another. I think the show has asked and has been given permission to kind of write what they think is the best ending for the show, because they, no matter what, regardless of book 10 coming out, have to condense what is left of the story into 10 episodes, and already have. So, because it's already been filmed. So I do think that they probably took a lot of liberty, given that Matthew Roberts is writing the prequel show. The prequel show is not going to be based on any source material. Diana has said that it will be a different version of events than the prequel book that she is writing about Ellen and Brian. So, and I said this in one of my review videos, like, this seems to be the fork in the road where the show is going to pull a Game of Thrones of some sort, and they're going to write what they think will work best, and because they're writing it and they're in their own writer's room and they don't have to follow Diana's blueprint, it does seem like they might be weaving this into the prequel series some way, in a way that's not possible if they follow the source material. The baby could have been stillborn, but not hers. I've thought of that too. Yes. She did hold Faith all day. Yeah. That's why it just seems, it's hard to pinpoint when this could have happened. Rolo passing, a sign that Ian is ready to be a father, since I think he meant to say Rachel's pregnant. It could be very much a symbol of that. He does say he waited. That was just heartbreaking. In the books, I sobbed when Rollo passed away. And in the show last night, I was crying. She loves to give clues. Ooh, where'd your comment go? She loves to give clues in her books. She doesn't always spell it out for you. No, she doesn't. She likes to keep things very ambiguous, which is why I love her book so much. It makes us think we're having a conversation about it right now because of that, and I think that's really, really magical storytelling. Someone said Master Raymond could have sang the song to Faith as she grew up to give her comfort. I've also seen that comment in my videos today too. Yeah, I mean, depending on when Faith lived, who she grew up with, if they knew Claire, if they knew the situation, if they were from the same time as Claire, there's so many different ways that this Faith character, whether it's the real one or another one, could have learned that song and sang it to her. But the fact of the matter is, Fanny was singing it in the episode, so it's been canonized in some capacity, and now they just have to figure out how they're going to spell out how that came to be, and I'm very excited to see how they plan to write that out. The song will play a huge part in the prequel show. Interesting. So I made a comment in one of my videos today. Let me see if I can find it. I have my notes from the videos today. That song was released in 1907. So it would be placed right in the thick of things for Claire's parents, which is interesting to think about. Are there book spoilers here? Yes. I'm a big spoiler person. I always start all my videos with that. I like spoilers. I'm someone who I think it must be, it's not ADHD, but it's almost like a anxiety thing where I have comfort shows that I watch because I know what's going to happen and I know that my emotions will be regulated. I like spoilers for that reason too. I like knowing what's coming so that I don't feel anxious. And so yes, I'm always a spoiler person, but with fair warning. But welcome if you came from the For You page. Someone wrote, I think Master Raymond maybe gave the baby to Claire's mother after she had to leave Claire. So a lot of people are thinking, based on the Blood of My Blood trailer, that Claire's mother is a time traveler. And that would be very cool if that was how they wove this into the story and perhaps had her play a bigger role in this part here. It's definitely a character that I think they could certainly write that into because she's a very blank slate right now. And again, that's kind of at the benefit of the writer's room right now because they don't have anything about her that they have to adhere to. So yeah, the world's your oyster with Claire's mom and how she could be involved in this story, which is crazy to think about. It really opens everything up in a way that I didn't think was possible. Possible that, that was the same comment here. Faith had red hair. Yes, that was definitely a point in the books that looks a little different based on the locket. And Master Raymond asking for forgiveness does imply that he might have been guilty of something. But I know that a lot of people who have read the books don't really feel comfortable with the idea that he could have been that cruel or just mean about, not mean is the wrong word, I guess cruel is the only word here, to willingly take her away after seeing Claire so upset. There has to be, in my mind, for it to be something that I'm okay with, like a very, very, very big justification as to why she was so central to whatever he's doing with her. I think that without that, it feels like a wasted storyline almost. Do you think that there may have been another child that reminded them of the original Faith? Reminded who of the original Faith? Is it over? No, it's just the season 7 finale. There's going to be a season 8. Did they speak of Faith being alive in the books? So, thank you. So, I said this a little earlier in the live. In book 9, when Fanny goes to live with Claire and Jamie on the ridge, Claire has a lot of thoughts about the possibility of Faith being Fanny and Jane's mother, and a lot of it is circumstantial and conclusions she's drawing from little tidbits of information that Fanny kind of reveals inadvertently. And Jamie is often the one in the conversation that Claire has with him, afterwards when they're privately discussing it, kind of talking her a little off the ledge and telling her all the ways in which she's probably, oh, thank you for the dolphin, telling Claire all the ways in which she's probably reaching, and that it's likely not Faith, because keep in mind, like, Jamie obviously is privy to the magic and mysticism around time travel because his wife is a time traveler and his daughter is a time traveler and all his grandchildren. But I do think that he is a lot more grounded in reality when it comes to this whole Faith situation than Claire in the books. So we really don't read it and interpret it as anything other than Claire's wishful thinking, almost, if that makes sense. But they do speak about her a lot in book 9. Claire ends up saving the life of a baby and channels Faith in a way when she does that, and heals the baby with her blue light for the first time, and Jamie witnesses that. So Faith is definitely a part of book 9 in a way that she previously had not been mentioned or talked about quite as often in the earlier books. Molly says, I think Faith will turn out to be Claire's mother. I think she went back in time. Could well be. She would know the song. Yes, she would. Yeah. I would like to think in my mind that Claire probably learned it. I don't know if it's from her mom. Like, it's very hard to know with Claire and her mother because so few, like, there's nothing written about her. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. We really don't know anything about Julia. Maddie says, I don't understand why anyone would lie about the baby being dead. Say, I don't know either, but again, it leads into essentially them creating a bigger storyline with Master Raymond and what he's been up to all of this time. And the baby, that specific child, would have to be a very key component of it in order for it to feel justified to me. Thanks so much for the gifts, guys. I still don't understand how lives work, but I can see them coming in and I appreciate it. The song wasn't written until 1907. Predictions on how Jamie will react to this in the show. So I think from what we saw in the finale, probably quite similarly to how he does in book 9, which is that he is obviously willing to entertain Claire in her working through all of her emotions and trying to make sense of, like, what's going on in her brain as it pertains to Faith, and is she alive and is she related to Fanny? And there's a lot of questions that comes up for Claire in book 9, but Jamie's always the one kind of bringing her back down to reality and trying to, like, pinpoint ways in which her reasoning could be faulty. So I think he's probably going to have the same sort of, like, curiosity about it and that ping that he feels in his chest when he thinks about Faith of what could have been about this child. But I also think he's probably going to be a little bit more grounded for Claire, if that makes sense, because he certainly is in the books. So I would imagine they're probably going to take him in a similar direction. Declare. Ooh. Yeah, someone said, couldn't it just be that Fanny's mom was also a time traveler with the name Faith? Yes. I'm really, really, again, shocked that they ended up using this as kind of like the shock and awe moment for the end of the season, because it certainly accomplished their goal of us talking about it and wanting to see what happens. But that doesn't, in my mind, necessarily mean that this is truth and we know for certain that it means that Faith lived. I think it might end up being a situation where, we're all hooked and want to see what happens, and then they might reel it back in season 8. I'm really not sure, which is fun for me to not be sure about something for the first time in a long time, since I'm a book reader. So yeah, very interesting take. Claire says all she remembers of her mother is her singing to her when she was very young. Yeah, I know, we get bits and pieces. Again, I haven't read the earlier books in a while. I've been reading 6, 7, 8 more recently, and 9. And I'm starting to read the earlier books again because I am crazy and embarking on trying to review all of the episodes from season 1 on. And to do that, I want to make sure that I'm freshly caught up on everything that happens in book 1. And yeah, I think there's just so much that's been happening in the later books that it's easy to, in my brain at least, like take what happens in the show and, thank you, Maddie, take what happens in the show and just assume that also is what happens in the book. But there's a lot of differences in the book. They followed it quite closely, but there's also tweaks. So I just want to make sure in my brain that I can go back and separate the two, because as of right now, a lot of what I remember about that book is probably what I remember about season 1, not necessarily the text. Someone says the conversation, where'd the comment go? The conversation with Brianna and Brian was beautiful. I've seen such mixed reactions to that scene. And I don't want to I don't want this to be controversial. I like the point of the scene. I like the conversation, having it be centralized around grief. I thought the lines were beautiful. I thought it made sense because in book 9 we get a moment where Brianna is back at the Ridge and she's back with her parents again, and she kind of explains in a way that her being able to meet Brian was hugely impactful on her. And so in the books that even though their interaction in the story was very short, it meant a lot for her to see the man that raised her father. And so for the show to elaborate on that conversation and make it a little longer was very cool to see. But I also felt like, as beautiful as the end part where they were talking about grief, the middle chunk of it very much felt like a plug for Blood of My Blood for me, which I get because they're trying to, strum up interest in the show, but also remind people about Brian and Ellen and their story, because it's been a long time since we've had them kind of at the forefront of our brains, and Lally Rock and, everything around that. So I get it. It was really beautiful. I wish that Brianna I think she was a little wooden in parts of the conversation. Like she just was looking at him with the same expression the whole time. But I did like the writing, and I liked the choice to add it. I didn't know if it needed to be there, but because I think to me it was definitely, it felt like a plug for the show, but it didn't mean I didn't enjoy it. No, Faith was not found to have lived in the books. It's all just theories that Claire has in her head. I think Frances will end up being their granddaughter and they will raise her. They do end up raising her. She goes back to the Ridge with them and she is with them through all of book 9. May have been another baby Mother Hildegard named Faith and sang to her to remind her of the first Faith. Also possible. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the live. Maybe Master Raymond knew that Claire needed to leave when she did before Claude, and Another theory that I've seen floating around is that this is another way in which he is kind of puppeteering the storyline, and he knew that if she didn't leave and go back, then we wouldn't get Bree, and we wouldn't get Jemmy and Mandy, and we wouldn't get Davy. So that is another theory that I think is got legs. Certainly does. Remember, Claire's ancestors come from Compton. Yes. There's also theories about, and I don't want to get into this too much on this live because it didn't pertain so much to this episode, but very plausible that Fergus Fraser, his lineage is connected to Claire's as well, and that they are related. When will the next season be? Do we know? No. So they filmed it, and they finished filming in, I want to say, September of last year, and it usually takes about as long to edit these seasons as it does to shoot them. I think now that we have confirmation that Blood of My Blood will be airing in the summer, we will likely not get season 8 until 2026 sometime. That's my interpretation. We'll have to wait another 2 years to find out another Droughtlander, but we won't have to wait that long for more Outlander content because we have Blood of My Blood coming. How would I hoped the episode would have ended? I said this in part 4 of my review video that originally I thought that it would have ended with Roger and Bree arriving at the ridge and them ending it by saying hello the house. But as soon as I saw that they weren't having the storyline with Jane take place in Savannah and that everything was remaining in Philadelphia, it really wouldn't have made sense how they could have traveled all that way back to the ridge, started rebuilding their life there, got acclimated there, had some of the plot points take place when they are back at the ridge, and then also have Roger and Bree arriving at the end of this season. I think it would have felt extremely rushed. We would have skipped over a lot. And so it makes sense that that's not how it ended, but I do think at one point that would have been a very cool way to end it, with the hello the house when they arrive back in Jamie and Claire's time and they're reunited with them again. But I didn't expect it to be a Faith ending. Will William and Brianna learn about Faith? Will William become closer to the Fraser family? So Brianna knows about it, and she's very curious of Fanny in the 9th book, because she's, again, back at the ridge and she sees Fanny quite often, and she's a little bit more pressing with getting information out of Fanny than I think Claire or Jamie is. They kind of just let her say things herself rather than asking her questions and trying to get the information out of her, whereas I think Brianna, not that she's particularly pushy with her, but she's definitely more curious about the information, and Claire notices that. And yeah, I think William and Bree, actually, in book 9, they interact a lot with each other, and in the book, that was some of my favorite scenes were the ones between William and Bree. And I remember when I first read Go and Tell the Bees That I Am Gone, that I was like flying through the pages trying to get back to a chapter where William and Bree were together or interacting. They send each other letters in that book. William calls her his sister, both in writing and in person in front of other people. So there was a lot of familial growth there between the two of them. And a big spoiler for the end of that book, by the end of that book, William does go back to Jamie and ask for his help again. So we don't see him interact with Jamie a lot in book 9, more so Bree, but he does go back to Jamie for help again at the end of book 9. Oh gosh, guys, I'm like 65 messages behind. I'm so sorry. I need to go back and watch the Faith episode again to see if there are any hints. Do we think they knew in season 2? I don't necessarily think they knew in season 2, because this concept wasn't really brought up until the later books anyway. when Diana was writing them, but definitely go back and watch season 2. They did change a few of the ways that Claire interacts with Master Raymond, like when he says, "I'll see you again." That doesn't happen in the books, but obviously now they're able to pull a lot of what happened in season 2 and make sense of it in the episode. So definitely rewatching season 2 is probably wise. Ooh. Do the books say why Jamie was watching Claire through the window in the beginning? Oh, in the beginning of the show. I thought you meant in the beginning of this episode. Not yet. That is another very curious thing that they have yet to explain. And I've done a theory video on it. I think a lot of people have theory videos, or theories, I should say, about Jamie's ghost. But no, it hasn't been explained in the books yet. With the way this episode went, I was waiting for the younger Jamie to show up on a break from university. Yes. So I don't think they would have done that, and it would have been really hard for them to do that just given Sam Heughan's age now. But I talked about this briefly in my review. Brianna and Roger's storyline, but particularly Brianna's, is very different in the books. And I don't know that I love how the show is handling it. When Bree goes back to find Roger, first of all, it's out of necessity to escape Rob Cameron and people who are after her because of the Fraser prophecy, which they have omitted. She's warned about people from a letter from Frank, which they've omitted. They can't necessarily return back to their time because there's a real threat there, which they've omitted. And when she does arrive back in that time, she's there before Roger finds them, or they find Roger, and she meets Brian then, and Brian sees her and really feels like he's seen a ghost and gets very spooked by how much she looks like Ellen, and also very spooked by how much Jemmy looks like Jamie's older brother Willie. And Bree has a thought in her head that it's dangerous for them to be in that time interacting with these people who are direct descendants of them, and what happens to those people has a direct effect to them even becoming, people. Like, they don't want to mess up the flow of time and have something go wrong. And then what happens if Jamie doesn't ever meet Claire? Then how does that affect everything else? And where they don't know a lot about time travel, that interaction scares Brianna a lot. Not like, she's physically scared, but I think it makes her think a lot about how dangerous it would be if they stayed there. And they both, her and Roger, recognize too that they know what will happen with Jamie. They know what will happen with Jenny. They know what will happen with Brian. And all of those things, if they were to be around and know they were going to happen, they don't trust themselves to not step in and intervene because it's so awful. And so in the books, Brianna and Roger, when they have that conversation about what to do and where to go, it's not so much a matter of like this romanticized version of I miss my mom. It's more of that's the only place we can go. We don't want to have to go there because it's a wartime and we said we weren't going to put our kids back in that situation, but we can't go back to Rob Cameron and we can't stay here. So it's definitely a little more of an urgency thing in the books than how the show is portraying it, which is a long-winded answer. Someone says, I really want to know more about what Frank knew. I really want the show to touch on it. I do too. I don't know if they will, though. I don't think Tobias Menzies was willing to come back necessarily. I also don't know if they wrote anything for him. But Diana did say that she's writing a book about what Frank knew, and I am very, very curious to read about it because I think he knew far more than anyone realizes. I also had someone comment earlier today saying the fact that Frank could see ghosts is probably significant. Like, how do we know that he couldn't see other ghosts? In book 9, Claire is told by the sachem that Jamie is followed around by the ghost of Frank and the ghost of a little girl, which they believe to be is Faith. So, yeah, Frank's very interesting, and him coming back up again in book 9 was fascinating to me. I really hope we get a lot more information about it. Someone says maybe Hello the House is the finale moment. I have a hard time believing, though, that for 10 episodes, Bree and Roger wouldn't be... Like, I don't know what they're going to do in between if they don't go earlier in season 8, rather. Are you on Instagram so we can follow these after Sunday? Yes, I was debating making an Instagram. I ended up making one. I'm doing it right now, actually, slowly transferring all of my videos from TikTok over to the Instagram account. Right now it's private because I want to make sure I have all the videos loaded. And I know some people have already gone over there and followed me. And then once everything's set up, I will make it live. And yes, I just put in a link tree in my TikTok bio, and it has the Instagram link in there. It has a Substack link in there. It has a Spotify link in there, and obviously TikTok. You think it... Okay. Some of these comments I've kind of passed their original... Are you on? Let's see. We'll go to the bottom. Sorry, guys, if I missed your comment. There's just so many. Someone said, I feel like Hello the House gives more season premiere vibes. I agree, just given where we've left the conversation between Bree and Roger. Someone says, you're so versed in the books. It's impressive. Do you study them, read them more than once? I've read them more than once. I don't know if I would say... I guess I do study them in some way. So when I'm watching the episodes and before I started posting on TikTok, a lot of the times I'm someone who loves having source material that shows are basing the show content off of, and how people can creatively take a book medium and turn it into a show. I just have always found that fascinating, and so I would often find myself going back to the original text and seeing how the scene differed, what they chose to keep and what they chose to get rid of, and I always found that really fascinating. So I ended up kind of accidentally studying them, I guess. So yes and no. Now when I make these videos, I have a good memory about what's happened, but I don't trust that my memory is always correct. So I usually end up going back and looking through the text to make sure that what I think happens actually happens in the book material. And then I basically write, a whole paper. This is 8 pages of notes that were made for this episode review. So I guess I'm kind of studying them. Someone asked, what is Hello the House? Hello the House is a phrase that at the end of Written in My Own Heart's Blood, which is the book that most of the second half of season 7 was based on, Claire and Jamie are back in Fraser's Ridge, and when they get there, they are starting to rebuild their life at the Ridge. A lot has changed. There are new people there, and you'll remember that their house, the big house, burned down, so they're trying to rebuild. They have Jenny with them, they have Jaman with them, they have Fanny with them, and they're just trying to rebuild what was once there. And at the end of the book, they're sitting up on the plot of land up on the hill where the new house that they're building is going to be, and they see this young couple walking towards them. They think it's probably people looking to settle on the Ridge. It ends up being Brianna and Roger and the kids, and her and Jamie look at them and think they look like the Mackenzies, but don't ever believe that the Mackenzies would come back. And then they hear Roger yell at the cabin, the first cabin that Jamie and Claire lived in, and then later Bree and Roger lived in, and they yell Hello the House at the house, and Jamie and Claire run down the hill, and that is how the book ends, because they leave it as a cliffhanger that the Mackenzies returned to their time and the family is reunited. So that is what Hello the House is. Someone says, does Bree tell Jamie she met Brian? Yes, she does in book 9, and it makes Jamie very emotional. And you'll remember too that in the books, Jenny is there. She is in America with them. And so Jamie tells Jenny about Bree meeting Brian. And Roger also tells Jamie that he has met a younger version of Jenny when he was visiting, as we saw in the show, and he's about to meet her again, obviously with a very large time jump in between, and he's worried that Jenny will recognize him. And so Jamie has to explain that to Jenny prior to her meeting Roger again. So yeah, when they return back to that time, there's a lot of very cool conversations that take place at the beginning of book 9. Ooh, Allie, I just saw the second half of your question, and now I can't find the first. I think they're going to tie it into Master Raymond and the space between. I think maybe in the show it will be Jamie's soil saved for Faith, and Faith's out in a different timeline. Potentially. There's really, like, I love that we can make so many theories about it. I think that's the most fun part, is that we can kind of really not be sure where it's going to go, and it could go any direction. I think that's cool. Let's see. How old would Faith be? Someone asked that earlier today, and I meant to do the math on that, and I hadn't. If anyone has done the math, feel free to put that in the comments. Oh gosh. Yeah, Faith was born in 1744. Molly wrote. Thank you, Molly. This is so hard to keep up with the comments. Thanks everyone for your questions. Are Roger and Bree going to share the land with Ian? I don't remember that. How bad is that? Does book 9 tell how that reunion went and the Mackenzies return? No, it does. So book 9 is interesting too, because it's the first book that Diana released after the show had been a thing, and she had been making the scripts and screenwriting, and I think it's one of those books that I read it and I can personally tell. But when they open book 9, thankfully it opens with them all sitting around a campfire and they're talking, and Jamie and Claire just cannot believe that they're actually physically with them again, and it's definitely very poignant. But the thing that kills me about it, and this is just the nature of a good book, is they don't just talk about everything then. They all just say, a lot happened, rest, we'll talk about it later. And then like a month goes by and they still haven't talked about anything. And you're reading the book like, when are they going to bring up this very important information that they should be talking about? So they do talk about it, but in like little snippets. So we get like a conversation between Jamie and Roger, and a conversation between Roger and Claire, and a conversation between Bree and Jamie. And so you get like all these little conversations, but they're spread out so far that you're kind of like, I wouldn't want to sit on that information longer than I had to. How are you guys not spilling your guts out and telling them everything you know right when you get there? But that's just me. That's what I would be doing. Someone says Faith would be 33 or 34-ish. Thank you. 32 to 34-ish, sorry. And she would have been about 18 when she had Jane, which sounds right. I'm wondering how Galus and Dougal will play into Buck's story, other than them being his parents? Do you mean beyond that? I haven't read any of the books. Can I just start reading book 9 now, do you think? Assuming you're all the way caught up with the show, you can, but I think there'd be a lot of plot that you'd kind of not really know the backstory on and might skim over, and it might not mean that much to you, but I certainly think you could. I don't think it would ruin your experience. I think it would probably end up causing you to have a few questions, but none that you couldn't find the answers to, personally, especially since you watched the show. I just finished the last episode, and I'm wondering if the song Claire sang to Faith was a future song. That song is from 1907, so that's why she has that face that Fanny, like, how could you possibly know the song? Because it hasn't been written and doesn't exist yet at that point in time. Oh, Claire says I'm lagging. I'm sorry. It might be me. It very well could be me. I'm sorry, everyone. Someone says, I think they're messing with everyone to keep people invested for next season. Very likely. Very likely. Does Brianna tell her Jamie that she had met his dad? If so, what is his reaction to hearing that? Yes, Bri does tell Jamie that she met Brian. She speaks very highly of him. I think for her, it's really miraculous that she's able to meet the man that shaped her father and see him, watch him, just have her children meet their great grandfather. It's very mind-blowing to her and to Roger. And Jamie gets very emotional about it because for Jamie, he hasn't seen his father in a very, very long time, but for Brianna, it was a few months ago. And so she speaks of him as though he's still alive, and it makes it feel very real for Jamie again that his father did live, was alive months ago in someone else's experience. And so it's definitely an emotional time for him, and especially when he's explaining everything to his sister, who met Roger when Roger was looking for Jemmy and is about to meet Roger again. And again, like, for them both to try and conceptualize that Brianna and Roger were just speaking with their father not that long ago is something that really, it would blow anyone's mind, and it makes them very emotional, and it's a very cool scene for sure. Did Jenny know about time travel in the books? She did. She was told about it multiple times. I don't know if she believed in it. I think she's kind of like Lord John for much of the story, where he's like, yeah, I'll let you believe it. You know, like, I don't necessarily need to. But then when Roger comes back, and this is something that did bother me about book 9, Roger comes back and very clearly she met him as a young man and is meeting him again now. And they don't have a scene of them interacting with each other, and it really bothered me. So obviously Jenny knows that, time travel does happen because she's met Roger, remembers Roger, and then meets Roger again as a grown man. So yeah, very an interesting concept for her. Lord John also knows about time travel. He's been told multiple times by Brianna and by Claire. But again, he's kind of taken the stance of, I don't believe that, but I'm not going to not let you believe it. Oh, you're welcome. The woman in the flashback opening scene, could she have been Claire's mom? She could have. She very well could have. I think a lot of people are starting to think that that's probably a very real possibility, is that Claire's mother also raised Jane and Fanny. Also, I'm seeing some comments and people are answering for me, so thank you so much. If you know the answer to people's questions, jump in, help people out. But the song is not in the books. That is a show-only thing, this song reference. This is not something that's taken from the original text. It's definitely just show. Do I have a favorite book? I really liked Written in My Own Heart's Blood. That was one where I just couldn't put it down. Do Jamie and John become friends again? Well, a lot happens to Lord John in book 9, and they don't see each other for quite some time. And yeah, I think the current status is that I don't think that Jamie harbors as much ill will towards him anymore. Time is healing that wound, and then at the end of the book, when William needs Jamie, it is to go and rescue Lord John, and Jamie immediately goes and does that. And that is because he obviously still cares and loves Lord John as a friend. He would always do that for him. So are they friends in terms of like speaking, playing chess again? Not currently in the books, but I have faith that in book 10 that will happen again. Hi Kathy, thank you so much. I'm happy to have you here. Let's see. Yeah, poor Lord John Grey. He gets the brunt of it. He really, and again, that's another thing where this season really didn't touch on what's going to happen to him a lot. So I don't even know if they're going to go through with what happens to him in book 9. And everything that happens with Richardson. Like, they just totally dropped that storyline. He's just not a factor and in the finale, so that was an interesting choice. I try and make sure that I always give the show a little bit of grace, though, because it takes so much to make a show, just so much that you can't even fathom, and how long it takes to storyboard it all and come up with what's going to happen and make sure that it's going to make sense and piece it all together and build the sets and come up with the schedule and schedule all the actors, and then for them to find out midway through shooting this season that they were greenlit for an 8th season and having to scramble and quickly pull everything back together again. Like, I commend them for pulling off what they did, because that is not an easy job. That is not an easy thing to do. Yes, they have source material, but they've kind of traveled down a path where a lot of the things that they may have been able to fall back on would have to be written differently at this point in the story. So I really give them a lot of credit for what they are able to do. I think they have a very big opinionated fan base that, you know, we love the source material so much, and I know book readers are very opinionated, but that's a hard job, and I can't help but be happy that we're even getting a show adaptation. So I'm really not one to nitpick the crap out of it. Michaela says, I love the face-off at the end with Lord John Grey and Jamie around Claire. That was one of my favorite chapters in the books. It was really funny to read that scene. Yeah, it's just a really funny interaction between the two. I'm trying to find here. That takes place in chapter 133 of Written in My Own Heart's Blood. So if you want to read the actual scene from the book, I would do that. Claire in that scene makes a point of saying that, you know, Lord John didn't come armed. He doesn't intend to shoot Jamie, and Jamie didn't strangle him the first time, so clearly he's not going to do it now. So they really just need to put their weapons down and shut up, because they're there to tend to Claire. No, I'm not going to be on whatever that new app is, Red Note or something. I will not be moving to there. I don't know anything about it. It would be awesome if they made a movie to wrap it all up. A lot of people have talked about that. I think it would be probably tricky to get all the actors available for the same time, but never say never. I think that would be very cool if they could somehow leave the end of the show open-ended enough that they could then work in book 10 should they so choose. It is very sad to imagine that Jamie and Claire never got to spend time with Faith and she lived. I think that's really heartbreaking. If that's the case, really heartbreaking. And like, obviously you can see on Claire's face at the end, which by the way, like, Katrina Balfe deserves all the flowers in the world for her performance really throughout this whole season. I thought both her and Sam were fantastic. Someone commented earlier saying that they think that because Sam and Katrina knew that this was really like they're staring down the barrel of the end of the show, that they've really outdone themselves with the acting, and I couldn't agree more. I think Sam, the last 2 episodes, was just phenomenal, and I've always thought he's just been an excellent Jamie, but there's been some scenes where I've not seen him push it as much, and he's just been pushing it. really, really beautifully in the last 2 episodes in particular. Oh, thanks, Olivia. Happy to have you here. Yes, Lisa, I do have a YouTube. And I, again, have been migrating all of the videos from here over to YouTube. What would you like to know about Book 9, Nancy? It's a big book. I'd need some specifics. Kathy says, is Faith surviving the show, or is Faith surviving a show-only thing? Correct. They have made sort of implications about it in the books, but nothing concrete. Jamie was robbed of being a dad and not seeing his 3 children growing up. Yeah, truly. Also, I'm curious everyone's opinion about the scene between Jamie and William at the end of the episode, because that was one of my favorites, hands down. And the line at the end when William says to him, I will never call you father, that is not in the books. Not in the books. He doesn't say that to Jamie. And it's like they just purposefully broke Jamie's heart all over again, and it was really well acted. I absolutely loved it. Most of everything that happens in that conversation, except for that one last line, is taken directly out of the books. I thought they did a beautiful job with the flashbacks, having that be the way that they convey what we as book readers know is William's feelings during this conversation. So that was one of my favorite scenes of the episode. I don't know if anyone else agrees. Yes, there will be one more season of Outlander. There will be a season 8. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. Sam's face when Willie says that to him was perfect. Perfect. Just so perfect. I couldn't get over it. Also, William, and I've said this a million times, if you have been following me for a while, you know that this is my opinion. Charles has taken William, a character that I did not like in the books, and made him likable. I want to see him on my screen all the time. I want him involved in everything he can be. He's wonderful as William, and I really love watching him and Sam act across one another, because he's done a great job of capturing a lot of Sam's mannerisms and kind of weaving them into his own performance, and I just think he's a brilliant actor. I really, really do. It was unnecessary for him to say. I think, again, that's a plot device so that we, going into season 8, feel more invested in a payoff of him calling him his father. For him to say, I will never do something, you know that season 8, they're going to try and pay that off, so that we will be talking about it next season. I'm also looking forward to Blood of My Blood. I think it looks great. I think he should have told him that the only reason he left was because he was looking like him so much. Yeah, Cheryl, I think that would have been very interesting. But hard for him to say that when in the show, I think they resemble one another, certainly, but I don't think it's quite as obvious as the books make it out to be. So I don't know if that line would have translated that well for people who, I know, like a lot of people who are sticklers about casting choices, they probably would have been like, that line doesn't make sense. They don't look that much alike. The Geneva flashback, I was shocked. I made a video in the first half of season 7 when William was about to show up on our screens. Adult William was about to show up. And I had said that, you know, people were upset that he didn't look a lot like Jamie, but I personally felt like Charles did look a lot like the casting of Geneva. And this was, I think, confirmation for me that I probably was right. I think they look so much alike, and especially that one shot. I'm pretty sure that's the shot I used in my video of her face, and then they had, at that point, released the promotional image of William dressed in his red coat, and when you put them side by side, I thought they looked really, really similar. You could see him going from tender to flabbergasted in seconds. I know. Truly just broke my heart. Yeah, Charles really does look like what their child likely would have looked like. It's really impeccable. He does look a lot like Hannah. I think it's great casting. And he can act. Like, what is it? What are the odds? That's the thing that I always say, that I'm not super invested in people necessarily looking exactly like the book characters, because they have to be able to act. Like, if you look like someone and can't act, then I'm out of the story. I'm not immersed in it like I should be. But if you can act like the character that I love, and you might look slightly different, like, I'm fine with that. Lord John Grey is a perfect example. He is blonde in the books, but David Barry is Lord John to me. No one else could be Lord John. Charles does do his mannerisms very well. I remember when they cast him, he had done an interview and he was saying that he had been studying Sam's mannerisms for quite some time, so that would be like part of his physicality, and you can tell he definitely did his homework. Someone saying, why are people saying season 8? There will be a season 8. This was not the finale of the show, just of season 7. I'm always careful what I say about the casting of Brianna, because I just don't like being callous for no reason. I will say that the one thing about Brianna's casting that I truly think makes it a miscast is that so much of Brianna's personality is her size and how intimidating she is when she walks into a room. That's like a huge component of who she is as a character. And while I do think Sophie does look a lot like Sam, and in that sense it's a good casting because she looks like him, she's not as tall as Brie is in the books. She's not as like muscular as she's depicted as being in the books. And that sort of physicality and presence that she has in the books, everywhere she goes she draws attention, and that's always something that's written in all the scenes she's in. That's missing with Sophie because she's so much more petite. So in that respect, I definitely think that casting decision, I feel it more because I envision Brianna as so much of her interactions with the world and everyone in it have to do with what she looks like and her size. So yeah. And I don't necessarily think that her and Roger's chemistry in the show is quite the same as the books, but also Brie and Roger in the books don't have this like outrageous chemistry either. So I wasn't really looking for that. It's their relationship, because you're in their brains so much when you're reading the series. Their relationship dynamic is so different from Claire and Jamie's that I really wasn't looking for them to have that same kind of like crazy spark, because they don't have it in the books either, if that makes sense. I'm seeing everyone's opinions on Brie. Yeah, Kathy agreed with me. She does command attention in the books. Yeah, her makeup and hair hasn't been the same either. I don't know, again, like if that's an actor's choice to say don't bleach or dye my eyebrows, or I don't know how that happens. But it's definitely a different hair. I loved her hair in season 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, when it was just like really dark and beautiful, and it's gotten lighter and redder over time, and it looks like a fake red now to me. I don't love it. I don't love the wig, especially when her eyebrows are so much darker. I'm catching up here. I love Rachel too. I think she's a great casting. She's great. Someone said, do we think Jane could be Faith? No, because I mean, I don't want to say no because I don't know anything. We're all in the dark here. But Jane and Fanny have memories of their mother. So, and their mother was named Faith. So I don't necessarily think that that could have been the case. Also, Jane was a lot younger than Faith would have been. Someone says Rollo. I know. Rollo. I cried twice in this episode, and Rollo was a big part of the crying. What am I hoping they will include into season 8 from book 9? There's a lot from book 8 that they didn't include that I want them to put in season 8. And there's a lot from book 9 that, I don't know. There's the whole storyline with Marsley and Fergus that obviously we didn't get because the actors weren't available. Like, that is a lot of story that I would love to see. Because I love Fergus and Marsley. And Fergus in particular, he is got a lot going on in these books. And I'd love for them to include anything to do with him, especially since we've seen Percy Beauchamp show up. So to me, that seems like maybe the door will open for more Marsley and Fergus storyline. In terms of what I think they're going to pull from book 9, which is Go and Tell the Bees That I'm Gone, I think obviously they've opened the door with the Fanny storyline, so she'll be central. We know that Fergus and Marsley are coming back for that, so I don't know if they're going to just like skip what happens to their family. But the fire with Henri Christian is so huge that I don't know how they could just skip it. And then there's Claire's healing powers that they really haven't touched on in the show, but are huge in book 9. So I'm hoping that they'll weave that in a little bit more, and maybe they will now that the whole Faith storyline is coming back in. Obviously, the Battle of King's Mountain is a huge piece of book 9 that they have to include it. But again, that scene's only as impactful as them talking about Claire's healing powers. So there's a lot of things. And that probably sounds very confusing to people who haven't read the books. So there's a lot that they haven't touched on. Bree's heart condition, yes. Jamie reading Frank's book, I would love that. I think that they wouldn't have, well, never say never. They did show Bree reading the book and opening it and seeing Frank's picture in the books. She brings that book back in time with her and gives it to Jamie, and Jamie reads it, and he feels like Frank is talking directly to him in that book. He mentions Jamie in that book. The events of that book take place in book 9, and Claire starts to realize that maybe it was more of a warning for Jamie rather than him harassing him through time. But Jamie reading the book is so cool. So I do hope they include that. Yeah, I really, really do. Someone mentions Davy not being able to time travel when both parents can. I've mentioned this in a few comments where people have said things about like the time traveling gene, and a lot of people come at me and will be like, well, they have to time travel, or because they're one, their parent has to be one. To me, I almost look at it as like a recessive gene. So it might not express itself in everybody. Even if you have it with both parents, it might not express itself with everyone, is how I've always interpreted it, especially when it comes to Davy. It would be nice if Henri Christian lived. That was so sad. That was really, really sad. But it also really shapes who Germain ends up being. So it's like you can't eliminate something without having a really strong backup plan for it. That's how she's written these books. They're so interwoven. So as soon as you remove a plot point, it affects the storyline somewhere else, and you have to be really meticulous about how they handle it. Davy is Bree and Roger's third child that they have in book 9. Yes, Davy having the red light like Jamie, yeah. Like Jamie's a perfect example. I mean, obviously, like Claire is a parent who can time travel, and so therefore Brianna can, but you can have a child with someone who can't time travel and still have the gene pass on. It's not like you need two parents to do it. So I like to think that it could be like a recessive gene for sure. Have they confirmed that the show and the books will end differently? Yeah, they've basically said that they are writing it in a way that wraps it up in a way that seems satisfactory to them. Obviously, Diana is involved in some capacity with the show, but she is not the showrunner, so she can't make the final call on things. And she oversees the scripts and makes recommendations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they take her recommendations. So I expect that the end of the show will be very different than the end of the books. But I've always known that these are two different stories. And this finale is very much proof of that. So yeah, it will definitely be different than how book 10 goes, because they had to film it and shoot it without book 10 even being written yet. So they definitely took liberties with how they wrote it. Let's see. So is Roger too, because we're not sure if his mother was able to time travel, correct? Yep. Gigi, we don't know how Faith is alive, or if she is alive, or if she was alive. It's all up in the air right now. Nancy, this morning actually, Diana said that book 10 will hopefully, idealistically, come out around the time season 8 does, and I think season 8 will likely come out in 2026. So, not for a while. I was so bothered in the first few seasons with the differences, but had to keep them as separate stories. Exactly, Kathy. That's how I handle it too. Like, they're two different mediums. You can never take a book and copy it exactly the same. It's just not possible. You can follow it closely, you can do it justice, but it's very hard to take something where you get like a 360 view of the story. You get the internal monologue of the character. You could do a third person version of a story, or it's all in first person, and all of that is very hard to translate on screen. How will I see... Ooh. Oh, I lost the comment. I feel something about Claire touching Faith's birthstone. Something magic happened. When did she touch her birthstone? Which scene are you referring to? You'll be 30. 30s are great. Don't be afraid of 30s. Crazy to think about, though. I had to stop reading the books because I couldn't separate them from... Yeah, so some people are one way or another. Like, you either loyal to the books and the show is what you give up, or you're loyal to the show and the books maybe you just don't read them, or you're able to read both and enjoy them both for what they are. Thankfully, I'm someone who can enjoy them both for what they are and separately. Like, for me, Claire in the show is like a completely different character than Claire in the books. Like, they're not even close to me personally. Like, I don't think they're alike at all. Which is fascinating to some people, but I don't know, like, my interpretation of her when I'm reading is so different than how Katrina plays her. How will you see me after the van? I have just put a link tree in my bio here, and that has all of my other socials and where you will be able to find me. Yeah, someone saying Fanny and Jane could be Claire's sisters. That was a theory that came up a lot today in my comments, and I like that theory. I think that would be cool. Stacy, I agree. Claire is very funny in the books. I think Katrina plays her a lot more seriously in the show, but she is very funny. Does the show ever say who is Jane's mother and who was her mother? No. Right now the show is implying that Fanny and Jane's mother was Jamie and Claire's lost daughter, Faith. That was the big cliffhanger. Someone says, I didn't watch the finale until I knew I had your reviews up. Thanks. That's so nice. They take me so long, and I feel bad that, like, first of all, they take up my entire Friday doing this. At this point, I, like, schedule it into my schedule that Fridays I don't do anything but this because they take so long. And I always am feeling bad that I'm not releasing them, like, first thing in the morning, but I'm always like, I have to sleep. They take hours to do the research, then they take hours to film, and then they take a long time to upload, so I really can't feel bad about when they go up. I'm just happy that they're out on the day that the show comes out, but that means a lot, that you watch them and, you know, look forward to them in that way. That's so cool. Someone asked how Claire differs to me, in my opinion. So Claire in the books, I think she's funnier. I think she's more witty. I think she's more, how do I put this? Like, she's got a dirtier mind that you're very hyper aware of. I think she's less damselly in distress like in especially the earlier seasons. Like, when you're in her brain in the books and she makes these dumb decisions in the show where you're like, what are you doing? In the books, you at least have the benefit of knowing where she's coming from, like why she's doing the things she's doing. And in the show, she just does stuff and there's no context that you get from a medium like that where you have the benefit of knowing her motivations. And so the first couple of episodes with Claire being back in time with the Highlanders, I was getting frustrated with her because I was like, you're doing things that don't make any sense and you're being very reckless. But when you're in Claire's head in the books, I think you very quickly figure out kind of her motivations and her thought processes, and she's very smart. So not to say that Claire in the show isn't, I think it's just easier to like her in the books right away because you get a really broad understanding of how she thinks and how she ticks. And then in the later seasons, I think she's just a softer person than Katrina plays Claire. Like, she has moments where she's very soft, but I think on the whole, she still maintains this very strong outlook on life, and she's very, like, pushy towards the norms of the time. And Book Claire is too, but Book Claire is so emotional because of all the things going on in her world, and we spend so much time in her head, you know, in the aftermath of her being attacked and how she feels about Bree missing and how she thinks about Faith. Like, you get all the benefits of being in her head in all of those moments, and it just makes her feel like a more real, fully fleshed person, if that makes sense. That was a long-winded answer. And all the characters feel like that. Claire in the books is described as being like 5'6"-ish. She has brown curly hair and like almost auburn colored eyes, like gold colored eyes. Yes, Ian and Rachel do move to the Ridge and have their first child there. Let's see here. I think Book Claire and Show Claire are super similar to me. See, like, that's what I love about books. Like, everyone's interpretation of the characters are so different, and that's what makes book magical. You see, like, Macy says, I feel like she's very witty in the show. She is, but I think she's more, like, there's more examples of it in the books. Because, again, we get more scenes with her. Like, we just get more of Claire in the books. So she just feels a little bit more fully fleshed out to me than as compared to the show where we only get specific scenes with her. Could Faith still be alive? Yeah, that's the giant question. Someone says they're on the 6th book and love both the show and the books, but the books really drag on sometimes. Yeah, they do. She likes to write a scene in detail, and I think that's what makes the book so immersive. At times it can be frustrating because she's writing scenes that drag on for pages and pages about people that aren't central to the plot. But that's just how her brain works, and I can't really fault her for that. I think that's incredibly interesting when you have someone whose brain works that way and is able to use their talents like that. I wish I could. I'm writing a book and it's so hard. It's so hard. Will I do this for Blood in My Blood? Yes, I plan to. I'm excited for that show. I don't know why, but if Outlander was like Don't Worry, Darling, the movie. I liked that movie. I enjoyed Don't Worry, Darling. I also love Florence Pugh. I think she's a wonderful actress. Do I think Buck is going to stay with Roger and Brianna? In the books, no. He actually stays in that time and goes back to meet Galus. So, does William ever come to the Ridge? Yeah, he goes at the end of book 9 to ask Jamie for his help to go save Lord John Grey, who has been kidnapped by Captain Richardson. Will I go live on YouTube? I've never done that before. Never say never. I think I would. I think that could be fun. I never thought I'd go live on TikTok, and here we are. I was very nervous to do it for the first time, but it's not that bad. No, Megan, that was the season finale, but not the final episode of the show. There will be a season 8. Oh, Jess, crying. I feel, yeah, there's a lot that happened in this episode. I really liked the episode. I don't know if I said that. I liked it. I know some people I've seen like immediate reactions aren't happy with the whole Faith storyline, but on the whole, I thought this was a really great episode. I was hooked the whole time. Macy, Blood in My Blood is technically a standalone in that Diana didn't write it. It's written by the showrunner, Matthew Roberts, who was given her blessing to write his interpretation of what he thinks happened with Claire's parents and Jamie's parents. She has her own book that she's writing about Jamie's parents. She does not plan on writing anything about Claire's parents. So this whole show is not canon to the books at all. This will be a separate thing from the books, if that makes sense. No, the new Faith storyline did not happen in the books. They've got like the concepts of this in book 9, but nothing concrete. It's just like a theory that Claire... It's not even a theory at that point. Like, it's just coincidences that Claire is acknowledging in book 9. Chrissy, I cried when Rollo passed away too, especially as a dog owner. It was awful. Nancy, a lot of reasoning behind the release wait. First of all, they're going to be releasing an entirely new show in between. Second, it takes them almost as long as it does to film the show, to edit it. So it took them a year, give or take, to film it. They finished filming in September. It will take them a year, give or take, to edit it. And then they usually try to time the release around a strategic date. So like they did with parts 1 and 2, they were released at strategic times of the year. So they'll probably do that with this too. And that's not surprising. Diana has not elaborated at all on Claire's parents, and she's actually said that they don't interest her, and which I think is very interesting. But Diana's writing process seems like she's very much like in the head of Claire, and so if Claire doesn't think about her parents, then why would she write about it? Like, it almost seems like that's the approach that Diana's taken, is that Claire doesn't have many thoughts about her parents, so then she has nothing to write about because Claire doesn't think about them. They're not people that interest Claire. So, or I shouldn't say Indra's Claire, but she just doesn't think about her parents hardly at all in the books. Thank you, Cheryl. My favorite character is Lord John Grey. I love him for a number of reasons. I think, so I'll preface with, I watched up until season 4 before I read the books, and I loved him in the show. And then I read the books, and I liked him in the books, and then I read the novellas, and I loved him. And I think, too, he is a very interesting character, just given the nature of who he is at that time period, how he has to navigate his life as someone who has status, but a huge secret that they harbor every single day of their lives. I think that he is a very noble person. I commend him in the books every time he's faced with a situation that really doesn't benefit him, but he does the right thing, even if it ends up being to his detriment, as we have seen in this season. I think he's very honorable. I really love his dynamic with Jamie in the books. I think it's such a fascinating storyline, especially the Scottish prisoner novella. That's one of my favorites of all time. And there's a lot about him that we don't know. We know a lot more if you read the novellas, but he carries himself in a way that almost like he's in the show comes across as a little bit guarded. And even in the books, as you're reading from his POV, he's guarded even with himself. So I just find him fascinating. I think he's a very interesting person, and I just find myself always wanting to learn more about him because of how reserved he is in his head. And I think David's portrayal of him in the show actually adds a lot more emotion to him than we get in the books, so that adds to me liking him. So excuse me, long-winded answer. I wish we got a spin-off too. Blood in My Blood, oh gosh, I have like a frog in my throat, is a series. Bree and Roger do have to travel back to America. They do it on a ship. They go to Ocracoke, and then they go through the stones. And they talk about how awful it is coming over on the ship when they get to the ridge in the books. Kathy, you started them in 1996. That's incredible. That's so cool. I don't know if we'll see young Ian's son again in the show, but he does come back in book 9. Yes. Do I plan on watching The Couple Next Door? I debated it. I'll see if I have time. I only see Sam as Jamie too, and everything else that he's in, and I notice a lot of his acting tics when he plays other characters are similar to Jamie, but Jamie is such a period piece character that it is funny when they show up in his more modern characters. I'm glad we have some other Lord John Grey fans in the chat here. Ian's character crying when Rollo died put me in tears. He did a great job. He really did. He did a really good job. I think John Hunter Bell is a really good actor. I think he's a sweet actor. What was the song playing during the credits? That's the original song that Claire sings. I have the title here in my notes. Where is it? This is what happens when I have 8 pages of notes. I Do Like to Be Beside the Sea is the name of the song that Claire sings to Faith, and we hear Jane humming it when she's looking out the window, and we hear Fanny singing it at the end of the episode. Season 8 is the last season, Michelle, yes, as far as we know. Oh no, Misty, why is The Couple Next Door so bad? They've been really hyping it up and pushing it. They want everyone who's an Outlander fan to go watch it. This episode had you devastated. I know. It was a roller coaster. I don't really love the Fanny route either, but it does give book readers a little something new. I agree. Because now I don't know what's going to happen and it's throwing me off. I have read The Space Between. Yes. It's a great novella. One of my favorites. Yes, in book 9, we do see Ian and Rachel's kid. And as of the end of book 9, William is not married. No. He doesn't even have a love interest at present. He has a few interesting interactions with women in book 9. One of which I could not stand. I really didn't like that storyline personally, but again, that ties into the whole Lord John Grey of it all, and I don't know if they're going to cover his book 9 story in the same way as the book, so I'm really curious. There are some promotional images that came out from behind the scenes of them filming season 8, and one of my followers had private messaged me about it because the actress that William's standing next to looks a lot like the actress who played Jane, and so she thought Jane might have lived and was in season 8, but I think it is Amaranthus Grey, and I didn't like her in the books, so I'll be curious if that's who it is. Hi Sylvester, I'm good, how are you? Yeah, the Rollo and Faith, I cried. Yeah, I cried when Claire cried. All right, everyone's saying The Couple Next Door wasn't that good, so maybe I shouldn't watch it. I'm really, really happy that Lord John Grey got his moment in the sun this season and more screen time for sure. Yeah, the Dragonfly connection had me shocked too. It was clever writing. Yeah, so if Jane and Fanny's mother is Faith, then that means that Claire and Jamie are their grandparents. He does look really cool with the eye patch. I love him with the eye patch and his long coat that he walks around in. He looks great. Okay, I'm glad I'm not alone and that other people didn't like Amaranthus either. Part of me thinks she is a spy working with Richardson, spying on the Grey family, and I just don't trust her. I really don't trust her. The Couple Next Door episode 1 was okay, but I love anything Sam is in. I haven't loved everything Sam's in, so I guess I'm not emotionally tied to watching The Couple Next Door, but they're pushing it so hard. They literally skipped a week so that the finale would air on the same night as this show, so I'm like, do I just give it the old college try and see if it's for me or not? It probably won't be, but I might as well. Yes, Nancy, William would be their uncle. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that Amaranthus wants her son to have a title, and she's definitely trying to put herself in a position of power, but I just feel like for the writing's sake, she asks some very weird questions at certain points that I remember. I have notes somewhere on my Tumblr page from years ago where I had been saying as I was reading Bees for the first time that a lot of what was happening with her character made me just have this gut feeling that there was more to her than her just wanting to position her and her son, Trevor, in a position of power and influence. I just always felt like there was more to her character and that she was so calculated that it just seemed like she must be trained by someone on how to be so calculated. She just really, I didn't trust her. At what point in season 8 do I think Bree and Roger will reunite with the rest of the family? I would assume it would be early, but I'm not sure. Like, they could take this one of two ways, because the way this show runs is that we usually have like a first unit that gets the bulk of the storyline, and then we get a second unit that gets the like spliced in storyline. So Bree and Roger, for all of season 7, basically have been the second unit. Like, they've been the back burner story. And so they could either continue that, and to do that, I think they would drag out the like journey of them getting to America, getting to Ocracoke, getting to the Ridge, and have that take longer. Or they could at least give them like one full episode where we get the bulk of their storyline all at one time, and then they're just there. So I think it really depends on how the show wants to write it, and that also comes down to what storyline they want to give more screen time to, because the screen time is so precious with it being the last season that they might just fast forward through some scenes and just do what the book did, which is imply that they traveled all that way for months, and then have them recount that journey to Jamie and Claire when they get there, so that we don't ever see in the book them traveling there. They just tell Jamie and Claire when they arrive what happened while on their journey. I have to go scroll back up. Yeah, so William would have had relations with his niece if Faith lived, which is another reason why I don't know how I feel about it. The name of the book I was just talking about is Go and Tell the Bees That I'm Gone, which is book 9. Yeah, I liked Roger's reaction when he saw Bree too. I didn't love her appearing out of the mist. In the books, she actually hurts her ankle with Mandy and Roger, and Jemmy have to go find her, and Roger brings her to a doctor that he meets back in time and had already met, and he heals his throat and Buck's chest, and so he brings Bree to Hector, and Hector heals her with his healing blue light powers, and they see the blue light actually happening on Brianna's foot and ankle, and that becomes a very important tidbit of information that Roger then asks Claire about when they are reunited, and says, do you have those powers? And it really kind of spearheads her throughout book 9, trying to learn how to figure out if she has them and then how to use them properly. So again, that's another thing that I'm are you just not going to include that at all? Or are you going to include it in a different way? I'm so curious. Yes, Kathy, William would be their uncle. Yeah, Lauren, the Faith episode in season 2 makes me sob, especially when Claire goes back to the house and all of the people working in that house just are crying for her. That whole episode just made me lose it. So Sam taking on this role and trying to separate himself from Jamie, I don't know if it will work for people who watched Outlander, but for the rest of the world who haven't watched Outlander, first of all, they're lost. But I think he's still young enough that he's really trying to capitalize on doing as much as he can in his career. And Diana has said that a lot of the reason why the show is ending is because all of the actors have been doing it for 10 years and there's more lucrative things for them to be doing while they can. And that's fair. So I don't blame him for trying to separate himself from Jamie. I think, obviously, I think him and Katrina have a lot of love for what these characters have given them, but it's also limited them in terms of what they can do. And Katrina and Sam both have exhibited, in especially the last 2 episodes, they know how to act. They can do the big heavy lifting. And I think it would be a disservice to both of them to not try and do that in other mediums, because now it's are you a good actor only as this character, or are you a good actor in all these other ways? And I'm sure both of them want to explore that fully, and I don't blame them. Emmy says, remember in the books when Jamie and Claire both went to visit Faith's grave without telling each other? Yes, I do. That feels like forever ago. long time ago in the books. Danielle says, William and his storyline are off the rails. It's gonna get worse. Bree and Roger have their third child in book 9. And as of the end of book 9, they are still in the past, yes. Because their youngest son cannot travel. Season 8 will likely air in 2026. That's my guess and interpretation. Oh, someone says the music in Couple Next Door made it hard to watch. Good to know. Now I'm just getting more curious. I really need to have my own opinion on it. I watched the finale in the Stars app, yes. I'm from the UK. Can anyone tell me why I can't watch it on Prime? I'm not in the UK. I'm sorry. Anyone from the UK know the answer for Daisy? How would Faith know that song Claire sang? Yeah, that's a question that a lot of people are debating about, like whether or not Master Raymond might have taught her if Faith lived, if he raised her. We don't know who raised her. There's also people speculating that Claire's mom traveled back in time and is actually Faith and raised Jane and Fanny. There's a lot of speculation. Someone says they feel like Sam and Katrina have been over the show for a few years now. Yeah, I'm sure they are. I mean, I can't blame them. I think when you've played the same character for that long, I would wonder what else I'm capable of. I mean, obviously, that's like your home base and your security blanket, and I know a lot of actors probably love being on shows because they have consistent work and they know what their schedule's going to be, but I also think if you're a creative person, doing the same thing and being the same person for that long would probably make them feel that way, undoubtedly. Susie, go back and rewatch the finale or start at the beginning. Who's my least favorite character? Do I have a least favorite character? I feel like you'd have to break that up into like my least favorite main like core character versus like a secondary character. I haven't thought about this. That's a good question. Thanks for that question, Claire. I'm gonna have to think on that. There's just so many people that we've run into that I hated. Like, I really can't stand Blackjack Randall, obviously. That's an obvious one. But he's a good character. You know what I mean? Like, you can have people that are great characters, horrible people. And then you can have people that are just pointless characters. I'll have to think on that. Call me crazy, Claire is the one character I do not like in the books or the show. I don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of people get frustrated with her. And for those people, the main character is Jamie. And then for other people, the main character is Claire. And in the books, it's definitely Claire. She's the main character. She's the only person that it's told in first person point of view. Everyone else is told in third person. Do I think Faith was alive? I've thought about it even before this episode. I thought about it a lot when I was reading book 9, and I thought it was like a very romantic notion, but it complicated a lot of things if it were to be true. And I also had a hard time imagining like how you could justify that she lived. Like, I couldn't foresee a path where that made sense to me, so I haven't really bought into the concept that she lived. In the books, it definitely reads more like Claire trying to connect dots so that it could be plausible, and then Jamie kind of pulling her back down to reality and saying no. So I don't know. A part of me says no, because I think that, again, there would have to be a lot of things that need to be really justified for that to ever make sense. I think the part that wants it to be true is because I wish that Jamie and Claire were able to raise her. And I wonder who she would be. But that's also how Jamie and Claire think about her in the books, is they're always wondering what she would have looked like, what she would have been like, who she would have taken after. So I'll be curious. It's totally possible, yes. That's the thing, is like, where they've set this up is it could go any direction, and where they now have control over the lore behind Claire and Jamie's parents, it really can go any direction. Whereas in the book, there's a lot more confinements around the storyline, because we don't have any of that information that the show has. So that's where my brain gets confused, because if this is true in the show, that's one thing. If this is true in the books, that's an entirely different thing. And they're so separate, so it's hard for me to give you an answer without like the two mediums bleeding into one another, and they're not connected anymore. So it's really hard for me to say. I hope that makes sense. Will Frank ever make an appearance again? I hope so. He made an appearance in the books via a letter that he gives to Brianna, and also in a book that he wrote that mentions Jamie by name, and that Bree brings back in time and gives to Jamie, and Jamie spends most of book 9 reading, thinking that Frank wrote it to him, for him. And so in that capacity he returns. And I hope that the show has Brianna bring the book back at the very least. And then part of me wishes that when they get back in time and she has the book, because she brings books back for everyone. She brings a medical book back for Claire. That's a big deal. And Claire uses it to produce a lot of medical advancements that she couldn't do without having the book in front of her. So Bree brings it back for her. And part of me selfishly hopes that like she'll open the book from Frank, and maybe the letter that they didn't include in the show in this season like falls out of the book, and that's when she gets to read the letter, because I want the letter. I want Frank's letter. I like Ian and Rachel a lot. I like them in the books too, and I love Rachel in the books. I think she's wonderful, and I really like the actress who plays her in the show. Oh gosh, there's so many comments. Thanks, guys. That was the finale of season 7, Ruby. Yes. Yeah, there is so much to explore about Master Raymond. He is a fascinating character. I think Diana is still planning on writing a book about him. I really do think he is like the heart and soul of all of the time traveler lore in this storyline, and that this is a much bigger story than just Claire and Jamie. But to know that, we need to know more about him. We know he's a prehistoric time traveler. We know he has seen a lot. He obviously has a lot of descendants. He's a fascinating dude. So much we could learn about him. Everyone who's replying to people's questions, thank you so much, because I just simply cannot answer them all. I appreciate it. Yes, Brianna does have the bag, so I'm really hoping that the book's in there and the letter's in there. You said in a post, oh my gosh, guys, Izzy, I really wish there was a way for me to edit my videos. I put a comment in that video in caps locks because I was like, oh crap, people are going to think that he's a time traveler. Uncle Lamb did not die back in time. That was just me reading off of my computer screen and misspeaking. He did not die back in time. And I'm so sorry for everyone I've confused. That would be crazy if he was. He died in 1941, not 1741. He was not the first time traveler. Someone asked, how did I get into Outlander? So one of my coworkers, when I was still working in an office job, was watching the show with her boyfriend at the time, and she was raving about it, and she kept saying, you would really like this show, you would really like this show. And so I watched it, and I watched the first episode, and I had seen it on my Tumblr page, like clips from it, but I had never put two and two together that it was Outlander. And so I watched it on Netflix, and I watched it up until when season 4 came out. So then I got to watch season 4 in real time. And in between the end of that season and season 5, I read all of the books, all of the novellas, and then I watched it all again leading up to season 5, and then I've just been hooked on it since. And I went to Scotland with a friend of mine, and we did a lot of the Outlander spots where they filmed. I went to Edinburgh. Oh, thank you, Izzy. I went to Edinburgh on my first ever solo trip. I love Scotland. Like, this show had introduced me to Scotland. Like, the visuals of Scotland just totally enamored me, and my family lineage has ties to the Isle of Skye. And so I just became very fascinated with the history that I didn't know about that place because it looked so beautiful. And then when I visited it, I just became even more in love with Scotland. So the show has introduced me to a lot, and I love the books. I love any sort of book like this. I love a book to screen adaptation. That's like my favorite thing ever. And I love storytelling like Game of Thrones, where it's just like a very immaculately built world. The world building's really good. And so yeah, this show was like the perfect fit. Plus, I am a romantic at heart, and Jamie and Claire are like the pinnacle. So perfect recipe for me to like this show. Someone says, was the scene with Master Reman a dream, or did he actually visit her? It's, I think, being left open to interpretation, whether or not it was a dream. But the reason why it seems like it wasn't a dream, or could potentially not been real, is because Fanny is singing that song. And someone taught Fanny that song. So we know Master Raymond is related to Claire, yes. They both have the blue aura, and that is how he identifies people that are descendants of him. Let's see here. Woo. Is there more about Master Raymond in the books regarding the finale? No. Master Raymond hasn't made an appearance since Claire saw him in the hospital in Paris in the books. He hasn't come to her in a dream like that. A lot of what he says to her in the show, he didn't say in the books. So I think, again, that's where, like, the show is really taking it in a different direction. Like, he never says, I will see you again, or we will all be together again in the future. He doesn't say that in the books. That's all show. So we've seen him with Claire, and then we see him with the Comte Saint Germain and Joan McKimmey and Michael Fraser in The Space Between. And then we, like, get little hints of him being in different places similar to the Comte Saint Germain, but not in the same way that the show is choosing to show it. So no, they've kind of deviated from the books. Elizabeth, we've been having this discussion about whether or not Faith is alive all night. They're implying that she lived, not that she's still alive. They're implying that at one point she was alive. Currently, she is not. But that doesn't mean that, you know, she traveled to another time and she lives in another time. We really don't know. Yeah, someone's saying, read The Space Between. There's lots of info in that novella. It's a great novella, and it does have a lot of info, so I would definitely recommend reading that. I think that that is a safe place to start if you're curious about this storyline and Master Raymond and his descendants and time travel. Like, there's a lot of info in that novella that would be worth reading. Someone commented, maybe Francis knows the song because of a butterfly effect of Claire singing it in the hospital. Did anyone watch the movie The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher? It freaked me out when I watched it as a kid, but it could apply here. I think there's merit there. Someone says, Claire held faith for so long, I'm confused how she could have lived. Yeah, people think maybe that baby was swapped out, that Master Raymond somehow miraculously brought that baby back to life even though it had been so long, which I have a hard time believing. We're not sure. We're not sure. There's definitely a lot of open-ended questions here, which I think is the point. They want everyone talking about it, and we're definitely talking about it, especially the people who read the books. I think a lot of us are deeply confused as to why they went this route. But here we are, and now we get to talk about it, and everyone gets to have their opinion, and I like having conversations like this because other people think of things that I don't, and I think that's kind of the beauty of like a community around a book, is everyone might have a different idea, and it could be a really cool one. Yeah, I've been told, I've not been suggested or asked, I've been told to read the interview with Diana in Parade magazine all day long today, and I've been working on this, my Instagram, creating these videos. I haven't had time to read it yet, but I will. I will. Everyone's telling me to read it, and I will. That movie, yeah, it freaked me out. I haven't watched it since because it really freaked me out. Izzy is pointing out that Diana had said in this Parade article that she had left Faith opened because she was thinking about bringing her back and never did. I did see that she had, again, like the idea, but she hadn't fully fleshed it out, and she told the showrunners about the idea, and they must have interpreted it and used it in this way. So I did know that. I read that this morning on Diana's Facebook page. She had replied to someone's comment and said more or less the same thing, that she had kind of a rough outline and they read it and clearly have decided to interpret it in this direction, but she made a point to say that that is not how the books play out. So I'm very curious how she's gonna deal with this, because I feel like this is almost like a Game of Thrones where she hasn't written the finale and now the show is writing things, and now how will that affect how her book is interpreted? That's so tough. I can't imagine being in that position. Buck stays in the time that he's currently in the 1740s, and in the histories he is listed as deceased, so it's kind of implied that he passes away there in that time because he never returns to his own time. He did look very sad. I'm glad you liked the finale. I got full body chills last night at, well, I guess this morning at 1 a.m. when Claire hears Fanny singing the song, and I think I mainly got full body chills, less so from like the plot, more so from Katrina's acting, if that makes sense. I was just blown away. She did wonderfully. It's not that Buck can't go back, he chooses not to. He has a conversation with Roger that the show did include, where he explains that he ended up marrying Morag and taking her away from a man that she loved, and he felt guilty about that his whole life. And when he returned with her, because they went to America, and he just never felt right about, taking her away from this man. And when they went back there, he always had this feeling, and I'm saying this like I think this is what happened. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read this scene, but he felt like there was always the threat of her leaving him to go back to this man in Scotland. And so when he accidentally went through the stones, he realizes that if he doesn't go back, then it's the only opportunity that she has to live out a happy life with the man that she actually wants to be with, and that he'd be doing them all a favor by not coming back. And that's how he feels about the situation. And so it's implied that he chooses to stay for that reason. And he tells Roger that he's not a very good person for all of those reasons, and that is when he offers to go forward in time to go retrieve Brianna and Mandy for Roger as a way to kind of make amends for his mistakes. And because they are his family, that's like the one way that he can honor his family in a way that he thinks would be like a redemption arc. Obviously, he doesn't have to go because they come back in time and meet them there. But that was a really heartfelt conversation between the two of them in the books. I wonder if she's upset about any of the kind of pacing, she being Diana, the pacing of the seasons as of late, but I think she must know that they're doing the best they can, because she is involved. Like, she does see the scripts and she can make suggestions, so it's not like she's completely in the dark about what they're doing or what they're planning. And she wrote an episode this season, so she's still very much involved. So I have to think that there's a happy medium that they're all reaching together collectively, and that she'll have to be okay with that. Someone says Rollo's eyes being wide open made me laugh for a second, then I cried when Ian sobbed. I know, this is such a horrible thought, and if you have a dog, just be forewarned. My dog is 5, and I love her dearly, and my first thought was, oh my god, I hope that isn't what happens when I find her one day, that her eyes are open looking at me. I think I would fall apart and break, and yeah, it made me so sad. Someone said they were gifted book 9 and wondering if they can read it. I think you could, but there's going to be a lot of things that you probably don't understand, and there's a lot of characters that are not in the show that are going to be included that you probably won't know who they are. So, you can, but you'll have questions, and if you have questions, you can look up the answers, I'm sure. I usually do that if there's something I'm unsure about. I go on like Reddit forums and stuff. Yeah, I think everyone's feeling the Rollo death. The taxidermy was obvious, but like, I don't know how else they would have done that. Because they couldn't expect the dog to not move with its eyes closed either, so I feel like that was the only option they had. But it was only a quick shot, and then most of it was him kind of draping himself over him, and so that part is when I cried. Oh, I'm so sorry you haven't seen the episode. Yes, Rollo passes away. Spoiler. Yeah, I think everyone who knew that this was happening with Rollo this episode, when we got the little like promotional clip and young Ian was crying, I knew that was likely what that scene was going to be, and so I thought I was prepared, and I still sobbed. I still sobbed. He doesn't get another dog, but actually Jamie and Claire have dogs in their new home in book 9. Yeah, people are quoting, he waited till he knew you were there for me, and saying that they feel like he waited for him to return to die. That's totally how it goes in the books too. And that just makes it even more sad. And also, Ian wakes up in that morning and he immediately knows that Rollo's gone, because Rollo could like, it was kind of implied in the books that like Rollo could tell when Ian woke up just based on like his breathing or something, and he would immediately hop up and be like, okay, we're gonna start the day. And he didn't do it that morning, and so Ian just like knew in his heart that he had passed. It's so sad, but also like a beautiful character. Like, to make a dog have that much impact on all of us is amazing. I have to ask, what was everyone's favorite scene from the episode? And then I'm probably going to log off here because I was up until 1 and I need to go to bed. Why were they living in that church? Probably just due to like set constraints. They probably didn't want to build like another set that they had to go use just for them to have her be in a bed. They probably just were like, yeah, we'll just use the same set. I need to say this. It was 15 plus years after Claire left when he created William. Jamie, yeah. I don't know if there's a second part to that comment. Yeah, the Lord John Grey, Jamie, and Claire scene was a favorite of mine too. Oh, it seems to be a popular one with a few people. Oh my gosh, when Fanny was screaming looking through the cemetery for Jane. I know, that was really sad. That plays very differently in the books too. I kind of mentioned that in my review, how that differs in the books. Very different scene in the books. Jamie and William breaking into the house was fun. That was like a buddy cop film. And they were finally civil with one another. The Rollo scene. I know. Thank you for the heart. What about William possibly being with his niece? Yeah, that's one of those like, cool, we get Faith, and then you realize what the implications of that are, and you're like, ooh, we get Faith. The little actress who plays Fanny is amazing. I think she has a very, very bright acting career ahead of her. She was great. Emily says, I loved Roger reuniting with his family. I liked that part too. Ooh, cute little hat. Thank you. Someone says Jamie's face when William says, I will never call you father. That just broke my heart too. That whole scene with them talking about his mom is almost verbatim from the books, except for that line. And when I heard that line, I was like, ooh, the show just threw a punch right in Jamie's teeth. Bree and Brian scene, that was a popular one too. Yeah, Rachel telling Ian she was pregnant was so cute. Do I read the books or do the audiobooks? I've done both. I'm sad about Jamie and Lord John. I know. Me too. I love them together though, and I think like there's always that undercurrent of respect that they will have for one another that will never go away. So, and I know that it's there in the most recent book because Jamie like immediately goes to rescue him. So, yeah. Why did Jamie wipe the window? So in the books, that's made a little more clear. I had talked about it in some of the preview videos I did prior to this episode. Brianna had written a book one time that you could put like a sticky substance on the glass and then stick a piece of paper to it. And then when you break the glass, all of the glass will stick to the paper and not fall and shatter and make noise. So Jamie does that when they break in, so not to have the glass shatter and make noise. Obviously when they filmed it, like there was still some glass pieces that fell in, so it wasn't like as effective as I think It's implied to have worked in the books, but it's also like a small way that he can then have William ask, where did you learn that from? And him bring up Brianna. And when he brings up Brianna, oh, thanks for the ice cream. When he brings up Brianna, William's heart stops and he realizes that he's met Brianna already and that she is his sister. And that's like a big revelation for him in the book. Ooh, I have to go back and see some of these questions. Oh, some of these questions, it's like you guys send like 2 separate ones and I only seen the second one, so I don't know what you're referring to, and I'm so sorry. Does their friendship end in the books? No, but they also like don't see each other really again until, well, actually no, they really don't see each other again because Lord John ends up being kidnapped. So that was like the last time they saw each other. But we have moments where we're in Jamie and Lord John's head in the books, and they both, you know, think about one another, and it's not like they're thinking about each other with anger. You know, they think about each other hoping that they're both okay. My favorite scene was Master Raymond appearing, but then it was a dream, or was it? We don't know. We don't know if it was a dream, and that's the fun of it. Jamie and William discussing Geneva. I love how Jamie never utters a negative word about her. I know, so honorable. I think I talked about this in my review video too. Like, I really loved in the books that scene being in William's head, because there's a lot of moments where we get like a glimpse into how he feels about Jamie, and it's so important that Jamie tells him the redeeming qualities about Geneva, because it's very obvious that no one in his life has ever said a good thing about her, and he doesn't have this positive picture about her, and that's the fault of his family members for not sharing that with him. And then to hear this man speak about his mother, which again, like, William's thought negatively about that whole interaction and, you know, relationship since he found out that Jamie is his dad, but then to have that man speak positively about her and be the only person in his life who has, is so poignant for him. And in his head, he has these thoughts of, you know, when he says, did you love her or did she love you? When he says, did she love you? He immediately thinks it wouldn't have been hard to love you, because he loved Mac, the groom. And that whole interaction is just really, really impactful on William for sure. And him having flashbacks of being a kid with Mac and looking across at this man talking to him in such a way and saying he doesn't regret having him, like, it's just a very, very cool scene. But then of course they end it with him saying, I'll never call you father, and you're like, ah. The cliffhanger of book 9. Ooh, that was cool. Again, I don't know anything about these lives, so Izzy, thank you for the jellyfish. That was cool. Yeah, I felt like I was being punched in the gut when Willie said that to Jamie too. It was awful. Especially when we had just had those like really sweet flashbacks of him hugging him as a kid. I was like, oh my God, that's just so mean. So mean. Someone says, but he will call him Da. Yeah. I think the only reason they included that line is so that they have a bigger payoff in season 8 when him and Jamie are closer. And obviously if he's saying he'll never call him Dad, then clearly they want him to call him Dad next season. So, yeah. I think there will be a payoff there. And I really am excited for it because I love Show William. I really don't care for Book William. I really love Show William. All right, guys, if no one has any other questions, comments that they want to share with the group here, I am getting very tired, so I'm going to sign off for the night. I usually save these lives and post them on my YouTube channel. So if anyone joined late or left early or whatever and they want to watch them again, it will be up on there at some point, probably tomorrow. But thank you all for joining. I'm so glad that everyone enjoyed the episode and that we could talk about it. And oh, thank you, Izzy. I appreciate you guys all watching my videos. I never in a million years thought that people would care what I had to say about the show or be as interested in it as me. So this TikTok thing has been really, really fun, and I've loved every second of it. And I hope that you all will join me elsewhere on other platforms, obviously, since TikTok is going away. I am planning on doing a podcast where I talk about all of the episodes starting with season 1, which is like a huge endeavor for me, but something I'm actually very excited about. So hopefully you'll want to watch or join me on the podcast side of things. So yeah, this is not the end. Someone says, will I go live on YouTube? Probably. I've never done it before, but I might as well try it. Never say never. So thank you all. I appreciate it. And I will probably see you guys tomorrow. I'll probably put up another video of some sort. My YouTube and everything is linked in my TikTok bio. So it's the same username, and you can find me over there. And if you can't find me by looking it up, all of it will be in the link tree in my TikTok bio. So, and all of the videos from TikTok, I am moving over to Instagram, and they are already over on YouTube. So if you for some reason lose access to TikTok, I have spent days trying to move everything so that they will be available on other platforms for everybody. So awesome. Thank you guys. Have a great night, and I will talk to you all very soon.